Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Santa's snack and I'm sipping on some hot cocoa. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, Mars black, fire red, chrome yellow, and burnt umber, which I like to call brown. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using 3 tools today. I have a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing. And then I have 2 brushes. I have a 1-inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 8 round synthetic brush. And I'll refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch up the sizes on those too if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and the color I'm using is black. So I'm not going to do anything fancy here. I'm just going to be painting the entire canvas with black paint. So black is a really great color for covering the canvas, so you don't necessarily need to paint it in any specific direction. You're just looking for a nice full coat on the whole canvas. So sometimes you'll see me when I go and do a full coverage with one solid color, I'll go around my edges like this to make sure that I get them nice and complete, and then you can just kind of color in the middle. I'm using a pretty big brush, so mine will get painted pretty quickly, but if you're using a smaller brush, you could take a little bit more time. You most likely will not need to do multiple layers on this to get a good coverage, but if you find after your paint has dried that you want to add another layer just to make sure that you have full coverage, you can certainly do that. We are going to be using the same brush for the next step, so once you've got this all done, you can, just make sure I've got all mine on here, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the glow in the atmosphere or on the background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm going to use are red and yellow. I do recommend though that before you start the step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer to get it dry that way. So I'm going to be adding, I'm going to call it like kind of like a fireplace type of a glow behind here, or a candlelit kind of glow. I just really want there to be some nice warmth glow to the atmosphere behind the milk and cookie in the hand. So I'm going to be using red and yellow. They're both, the 2 colors that I'm using are very transparent or translucent. So they're going to take on a lot of that background black color. So it's going to allow me to kind of almost make it look nice and foggy and like it's got some nice drift and glow to it. So I'm going to start with some red paint on my brush. This will, the thicker I use the paint, it'll be brighter. the thinner it is when I rub it out into the black, the darker it will get because it'll see the black behind it. So I'm just going to kind of start down in this bottom area in through here, and then I'm just going to kind of rub it out in a circular type of motion. I'm going to be bringing it almost out to the edges of my canvas on this bottom left and right. I'm going to add some yellow to it in a minute, but right now I'm just going to start with my red paint, and you can see I'm just kind of rubbing it in, and because I'm rubbing it and I'm almost like thinning it out along the edges and throughout the middle, it's going to dry quickly and it's going to get darker as it dries. So I just picked up a little bit more red just so I can get a little bit more up in this top area. And again, I know that it's going to dry pretty dark, so I'm not really terribly concerned if it's a little bright at the moment. And if it turns out brighter than you had expected when it dries, you can always bring back some of the black. So know that that's always an opportunity too. And I'm really just kind of scrubbing it out and letting it disappear or dissipate into that black area. And then once I've got my red on here, I'm just gonna get this little bit in the middle to dry just a little bit more. So what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of lightly brushing out this red so it dries a little bit faster for me. So when I go to apply that yellow, it won't totally lift off the canvas. So I've got this kind of thinning out with a nice soft gentle brush stroke to it. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up some yellow. The thing that I want to caution you though is make sure that you get the majority of the water out of your brush and you're almost working with like a dry brush, because if you have a lot of water on your brush and you go to put the paint right on top of here, it's very kind of new, and what'll happen is you might lift it right off the canvas. So I'm just kind of getting the moisture out of my brush. I'm going to pick up a good amount of yellow, and I'm going to start adding my yellow glow or my brighter kind of highlight to this area. I'm going to bring this all the way down to the bottom, and you will notice if you're using a similar color yellow as I am, if it is directly on top of the black and there's no red underneath it, it might give you a little bit of a greenish hue to it. You can either roll with that, let it happen, or you can add a little bit more red to the equation. I think it's really cool because I think it kind of adds to that glow, but if you are not digging it, you can certainly just add a little bit more red to it. And right now I'm not using a firm touch, I'm really just kind of using a nice light touch to it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let mine dry, and if I feel that I want it to be brighter, I certainly will add another layer to it, and I recommend that you do the same as well. And then once you've got your glow on here, we will be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So you can put your large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to draw an outline for our Santa's hand, the cookie, and the glass of milk. I'm going to be using my chalk. I'm going to guide you through a series of markers and basic shapes, and by the time we're done, we'll have something that will be conducive to us painting in the base colors for these particular objects. So I'm going to start with my cookie because it's a nice kind of circular type of shape that we can build up. I do recommend that you make sure that your canvas is dry before you start this step too, because it's always easier to draw on a dry canvas than it is to draw on a wet canvas. So I'm going to start with my cookie, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself the center of my canvas, top to bottom, left to right. So for me, that's about right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the left from that. I would say about 2.5 inches. So this is for me about 8 inches. This is about 4. So maybe I'm about 2.5 inches. This is going to represent the top of my cookie somewhere in through there. And then I'm going to come down about halfway between there and the bottom of my canvas. I would say somewhere in through here, give or take 1/2 inch to an inch or so. It's a cookie, they come in all different shapes. And that's going to be the top and the bottom. And I'm just going to connect these in an oval circle type of shape. I am purposely going to make it kind of lumpy and bumpy around the edges because that looks like my homemade cookies that I make. You can make yours in whatever shape that you want. Maybe you want to do like a nice perfect Oreo cookie or something. So that's going to be that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing my glass. So I just need my glass to be a little bit wider than my cookie and a little bit lower. So I'm going to come a little bit lower than my cookie and go out maybe about a half of an inch or so, go out to the right just past where my cookie is, make myself a little marker, and do the same thing over here, make myself a little bit of a marker. And then I'm going to draw vertical lines down to the bottom of my canvas, but I'm going to have mine come in a little bit. So I'm going to take this and do a slightly diagonal line coming down towards the bottom of my canvas. So something like this, maybe this goes out like this, something like this. And then I'm going to connect these two with a slightly arcing line that goes up. So you could do it straight across, but I'm going to give it just a little bit of an arc, something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a similar arcing line about halfway down my my glass. So you can just give yourself a little bit of a marker. Then you could, to make sure that it's the same height, you could use your brush as a measuring tool and go to the other side and make yourself a mark at about the same height. And then you'll connect them with another kind of slightly arcing line like that. And you could do the same measuring technique to the top corners as well. Actually, I knew that was going to do that because this one looked a little bit higher on this side. So that's a good way to make sure that you're straight or it's not too tipped over. So just kind of measure how high those are. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my hand. So I'm going to have my hand kind of in this position. I'm modeling for you and everything. So something like that. So he's holding the cookie. This is going to be his thumb in through here. So I'm just going to draw myself a little bit of a thumb in through there. I'm going to bring this up and into the this part of the thumb. So I'm going to bring it up up like this, and then kind of give myself a curved line, which is going to represent this part. So it doesn't even have to be as dramatic as I just made it, something like that. So again, if this is about halfway up or down my canvas and through here, I'm maybe about an inch, inch and a half above that, and about 2 inches to the right. That's about as far out as I'm bringing it. And then I'm going to make the top part of the hand. So this is going to represent like this knuckle, this part of the finger is going to be behind the cookie, and then this top part of the hand. So to kind of give yourself a barrier so you don't go too big, what you can do is go up from here maybe about 2 inches and then over about 2 inches. That'll be the top of it, and that way you won't make it too big. And I'm going to connect it to, I'm going to go to the left of here, maybe about a half of an inch to an inch. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to connect them. I'm going to bring this over to the left, almost in a horizontal type of way. I'm going to curve it for the knuckle in through there, and then this just kind of rides down, and this will be like this, the front knuckle in through there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with anything, you could use water on a paintbrush or something. I'm going to erase this little chalk line in through here so I don't get confused during the painting process. Now I'm going to make his sleeve. So I'm going to, it's going to be big and bulky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first make myself a couple of marks. So again, I don't make it too big. I'm going to come down from this upper right hand corner about 2 inches, make myself a mark, and then I'm going to come down about halfway down my canvas, somewhere in this vicinity, make myself another mark. That's going to be the top and bottom of the sleeve, on the arm. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in from here. I would say, again, if this is about the center of my canvas, I'm a little to the right of that. And then I'm going to connect this marker to here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a big kind of oval type of a shape. So I'm going to bring this down like this. I'm going to bring it back up, connect it to here. And then I'm going to bring it right into this vicinity, right in through here. Then I'm going to make myself the big cuff part of the sleeve. So I'm going to first draw myself the rest of the arm part. So I'm going to just bring this in maybe about an inch or so, and then here I'm going to bring this diagonally down in kind of a little bit of a wavy line, a little bit past here. So if this stops here, this one is maybe a couple inches more. Now this is going to represent the cuff part. So I'm going to take it. You can make a couple little lines there just to give yourself a little barrier. I'm going to take this up like this, give myself a nice wavy line like that. And then I can connect these two with just a nice kind of, I'm going to give it a little bit of an arc so it looks like it's kind of going around the arm. And then I'll take this, bring it down a little bit like this, and then connect it with in through here. So I can just bring this in like this, and then I can connect it back up like this. I just noticed I have a couple of little fingertips in through here that I want to do as well. So I'm just going to take from right about here and give myself a couple of little tips. He needs the back of his fingers to show as well. There we go. And that's all I'm going to do for my outline. You can make any modifications you want. We're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So you can put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat for the hand, the cookie, and the glass of milk. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, black, white, yellow, and red. I guess I'm using all of my colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a custom gray that I'll be using as the base coat for the glove and the milk, and I'll be making a custom cookie color, cookie tan for my cookie. So I'm going to do the cookie first. So I have magically pre-made my color here. So I made myself a tan color that is darker than the final result of the cookie is going to be. This is going to allow me to make some great dimension within my cookie. So how I got to this was I used brown and yellow and a teeny touch of red and a little bit of white also. So brown, yellow, red, and white gives me this nice kind of like a milk chocolatey kind of brown color, and it's going to look a little bit different on that red on the base coat underneath it. And then I'm just going to paint it in. I don't need to do any perfect brushstroke. I actually am intentionally making this kind of on the messy side, so I've got some little pockets of lighter color and darker color. This is going to just start my process of my textured cookie because my cookies have lots of texture in them, so this one's going to have lots of texture too. So you can bump out the edges, so it's got all kinds of room for the chocolate chips to sit in. And all that good stuff. So I'm just kind of getting my color on here. And even if it doesn't turn out a perfect color, don't worry. We're going to have lots of details on top of it. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to create myself a custom gray color. So I'm going to go for a light to medium gray. So this is where I'm headed. How I got there was I used brown, a little bit of black, and then some white paint. And again, I'm just going for like a medium type of a gray. This is going to be the base coat for my milk and my glove. So once you've got that, you're just going to paint in the whole area. Again, no special brush stroke. The only thing I'm going to do is where the fingers meet the fingertips meet the side of the thumb, I'll leave myself a little bit of a visual gap so I know where the difference between those two is, but that's not entirely necessary because I have the whole side of the hand and the thumb to guide me. So if you want to, if you bump into that, it's no big deal. And then I'm just slowing down so I can get some good shape to the tips of my fingers like that. And then in through here, again, I don't need to do anything fancy. I just want to kind of bring it to the edge of my hand or my chalk in through here. And if you bump into your cookie along the way, that's all right. And if you still have chalk marks showing when you're done with this step, that's okay too. Because again, we've got lots more to go on our hand and all of the other details. So just getting this painted in. And then for my glass, I'm also going to paint this inside of here too. I didn't say I was going to do that, but I think I'm going to because I have this brush will work well for that. So I'm just going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, pick up a little bit of black. I just want to get this little area in through here. So I have a little bit of my gray plus black on my brush just to get this nice and dark in through here. I was going to try it with the bigger brush later when I'm doing the sleeve, but I think this will be conducive. Now I'm going to wash my brush. I'm going to put that gray back on in order to do my first layer for my glass. So this whole bottom section, I'm just going to paint with the gray. And then I'm going to do a really thin line on the exterior of the glass. I'm slowing down so I can have a nice clean line in through here, something like that. That's looking good. And then just going to paint this in, and I will slow down again when I go to do the exterior edge of the glass so I can get it nice and fluid and nice and straight. So when I'm doing something that I know should probably have a nice clean line along the edge, I'm going to make sure that my brush is in control. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to dip my brush in my water so I have fluidity in my bristles. I didn't even put more paint on my brush because I knew that I had the gray on there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go right along my chalk mark. Even if I still have chalk mark left over after this step, I'm okay with that. I'm just really looking for a pretty clean line in through here. So I'm going to take it right from my corner. I'm more concerned about my paint line as opposed to my chalk line. And then just kind of ride this down this edge in through here. And I think I need a little bit more paint so I can just make sure that I have good coverage in through here and just go right down that side. And because I have water on my brush too, the paint will look a little bit lighter when it's wet as opposed to when it's dry. So that will just know that that'll happen. And then I'm going to go right along my chalk mark here. And again, I know that it's okay if I still have a little bit of chalk left. I actually can erase that chalk once my paint dries. I can erase the chalk with a tiny bit of water. And then I'm going to go down this left-hand side. I'm just slowing down so I can get some nice edges to my glass. And then once I've got this done, we're going to be using this same brush. Actually, we're going to go to our big brush for the next step. We'll use our large brush for the next step. I'm actually going to, before I go away from here though, I'm going to just give myself a little bit of a edge right here. So I'm just bringing a little bit of a downward arc right in through there. There we go. Now I'm going to put my small brush away, take out my large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for the cuff and the sleeve. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are red and gray. So I'm going to do my sleeve first. So I'm using my large bristle brush, oh, and red paint. I'm using my large bristle brush so I can get texture within these areas. I really want them to look nice and fluffy. So what I'm doing is I'm dotting or stippling the paint on here. So this is going to give me this beautiful textural effect right from the beginning. So that way I don't struggle with brush stroke marks or anything like that. I'm going to put it a little bit heavier up on the top so that red is a little bit more vibrant up at the top. We will be doing a highlight and a shadow later, but right now we're just going to add the main coat on in through here. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to do the same thing with my gray paint for the cuff. So I just washed and dried my brush, and if you still have a little red on it at this point, that's okay. So I'm going to pick up some of my gray paint, and then I'll do the same thing. So as I reach my chalk mark, I just kind of tap it out so I have these little fluffy edges to it. And again, that's going to help when we go to make the fluffy parts on it. When I get to here, I'm going to just leave a little bit of the evidence of my the separation between the two, because these are both the same color. So as long as I can leave myself a little bit of the evidence of that that separation, that will help me through that painting process when I go to do that. I am going to overlap that red a little bit in a second here, but I'm giving it a second to dry before I go all the way over there. And then in through here, I'm just going to use the corner of my brush to just kind of tap up along here. So we've got a nice fluffy edge to the sleeve in through here. And then if by the time you're done doing this area and your red sleeve hasn't dried yet, it's all right if you bump into it. And if it turns a little bit pinker on you in this step, it's okay, again, because we're going to do that, the highlights and the shadows as we go through the future process. And then once you've got this done, we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. And you can see you don't have to paint this in all the way. That's what's going to add that texture to it later on down the road. And then once I've got this done, I'm going to put this large brush away, take out my small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our hand. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, gray, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some strategic shadows that are going to put our fingers in place, add some good dimension to it, add the form onto it, and then we're going to put some highlights on, and then it'll be all done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first kind of give myself a little bit of an outline where I want my thumb to go. So during this process, I will never have a ton of paint on my brush, and especially when I'm doing my shadows, I'll most likely have fluid or water on my brush as well, so I can get these colors to really work smoothly through the process. So right now I'm putting a tiny bit of water, brown, and black on the tip of my brush. I don't have much of paint at all, and if you're nervous, you can always just wipe it off a little bit on your paper towel. I'm going to start right underneath here. This is going to give me the separation between the thumb and these little fingers in through here. So something like this is going to give me a little bit of shadow underneath here. I'm going to pick up I wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a tiny bit of brown paint to just kind of get this to blend in or out of this little crevice. So a lot of times when I'm doing these little shadow making areas, I like to have them really nice and dark as they go up into that area, and then I just fade it out into the main section of that particular shape or object. And I know these are intended to look like they're underneath the finger, so that helps out. So then I'm going to outline where I want the top of the thumb to go. I'm going to have this kind of stopping at a little bit like diagonal from here, and maybe about, if this is about halfway between here and here, I'm a little bit to the right of that, so about here, and then just bringing it in this area in through here. I'm going to give myself a little bit of an outline for the inside of his hand, so like that, maybe up in through here, and then I'm going to just kind of create a couple of creases on the inside here that's going to look just like the glove is kind of wrinkled in that area. So I'm bringing these out in a little bit of a curved manner that's going to indicate that there's wrinkles to this part of the fabric of the glove. So darker on the inside and through here, and then just kind of pulling these out in a little bit of a curved manner to kind of blend in with that gray itself. I'm going to use the remnants on my brush to put a little bit of a shadow underneath the cuff of the sleeve. So again, this is a combination of black, brown, and water on my brush. And if you ever feel like you go too much or too dark, you can always bring back that original gray. So that's kind of like your safety net or your savior in this process. I just reloaded my brush up with the black, brown, and a little bit of water. Going to put it up in through this area, and then I just kind of rub it out so it blends out into that main area of that particular shape or object. Now what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that these shadowy areas blend in with the gray that I had, the original gray color. So I'm just picking that color up. I'm picking up gray without washing my brush and just kind of overlapping into that shadowy area. This is going to provide me with a nice second coat, solid coat. Make sure that I've got my you know, my lighter areas or my base color just blended into those shadows. I can even put a little bit on the tip in through here to blend it up into that shadow underneath. And then I'll do the same thing over on the on this front finger. Again, I'll put a highlight on in a minute, but right now I'm just making sure that my shadow area blends in with my mid-tone, which is the gray. So I just put a little bit more gray on my brush in through here. You can even clean up your edges along the way, and then of course in through here I'm pulling it back in the opposite direction into these little creases in between. I might actually put a little, picking up just a little bit more black and brown. I think I want this to kind of go up just a little bit. It looks good. I'm like, maybe I need a little bit more, but now that I'm putting it on, I'm like, well, that looks good the way that it is anyways. So I need a little bit more gray just to finish up this thumb, so I just picked up a little bit more gray. And again, just making sure I have that good second coat on here, and there's not really any too many shadows or any major shadows on this thumb to speak of, but we're going to put some highlights in a second, which will give the form to this thumb. So that's looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working my highlights on. So I'm going to pick up some white paint on my dirty brush. I'm going to start adding highlights where the part of the hand is closest to the light source, which is up here, as well as areas that are going to pop out. So that would be like the knuckle areas. So I've got my white on my brush. I'm going to go up here on this top knuckle in through here. So just kind of slowing down to get that on there, and maybe bringing it a little bit past here. And then I rub it out into that mid-tone or that gray. So you might find that this might take you a couple of layers or a couple of tries to get that blend the way that you want it. But it's a fun process once you get it started, and once you kind of understand, like, I want the finger to look round in through here. So I'm going to add a little bit more lightness. I'll probably put a little bit more gray in this section so it's not as bright as that top. But I just picked up a little bit of gray to get this to blend in, again, just so it's not as bright as that tippy top. Having the brightness, the brightest, where you really want it to go like up at the top, that's going to make it look, again, more realistic. I just picked up a touch more white. I'm going to put a highlight on this knuckle in through here, so this knuckle appears to pop out, something like that. Maybe a little bit on this, on the thumb in through here, so that thumb will pop out. The little tip of it will pop out a little bit more. And again, just kind of blending it out. I will amp up my brightest highlights in a second, but this is just kind of getting me all the information that I need for the form. Maybe a little tiny bit on these tips, and then maybe, I think I need a little bit in through here too, just to add. So I'm putting white plus gray on my brush. So anytime you want a little bit of volume, but not all the way, you can use your highlight color, for me, which is white, plus a little bit of that mid-tone. So you're providing different tonal values to get it to pop out or recede more. So I just picked up a little bit more white so I can get this area up here to be the brightest, and I'm going to pull it down so it looks like this finger is kind of curved over. And then you just keep fiddling with it until you feel that you've got it in the right depth that you want. And once you've got it done, we are going to use this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our cookie. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, the cookie color that we made, white, red, and maybe some additional yellow. But of course I'll call them out as I'm going to be using them. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach it like I did the hand, where I'm going to add a little bit of dimension to the cookie, which means I'm going to put a little bit of shadow down at the bottom of the cookie, maybe a little shadow underneath my Santa hand, and then some highlights, which will give the cookie its form and make it nice and round. Then we'll add some chocolate chips and some additional texture to it. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown and black on my brush at the same time, just an itty bitty bit on the tip of my brush. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a shadow underneath my fingertip in through here. And again, you don't need much to have a pretty solid impact on these kind of shadowy areas. And again, if you do it and you're like, wow, that was too much, we can disguise it with a chocolate chip or with cookie crumbles or anything along that line. So that's good. I'm going to pick up just a little bit more brown. So I might have a little bit of black left on my brush, but right now just kind of adding a little bit of shadowy area down at the bottom of the cookie, so it kind of looks like it's tipped over and maybe has a little bit of fullness to it. And I don't want a firm line, so I'm just kind of maneuvering my brush in a little bit of a circular type of manner so it blended up a little bit. I'm actually going to pick up some of my original tan because that was a little bit too, I felt like that shadow came up a little bit high. So I just picked up a little bit of my tan to just kind of dull that down a little bit in through there. So now that I've got that done, and you can have little light edges too. So you can use your original tan to just leave a couple of those edges on the brighter side. Again, that'll add more texture to your cookie. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush now, and I'm going to add a highlight type of a color. So I don't necessarily just want to use my original tan. I actually want to bring a little bit more kind of, I don't know what other name to call this other than like a buttery look to it. So I want it to be more like a orangey blondish kind of color for my highlight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tan, I'm going to add a touch more red, yellow, and white. So I'm in essence kind of adding an orange tone to that tan. So this is going to make it lighter and kind of more golden and more buttery. That's, I'm sure, not the right terminology for the color I'm making, but I'm making a lighter tan that is going to look good on my cookie. So something along that line will work. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this color sparingly. I don't need to put a lot of it, but I definitely want to add some highlights to my cookie, and I don't want to do the whole thing in this color. So I am just kind of wiggling my brush a little bit. Making some strategic kind of light spots, especially on the top of the cookie, maybe a little bit over in through here as the cookie's kind of going around the corner. Now I'm going to pick up some of my original cookie color on my dirty brush so I can get this to just kind of blend over without going too far with that light color, because I really just want that upper region to look like it is illuminated by whatever the atmosphere is. And then I'm just kind of wiggling my brush to give myself that extra texture. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush again so I can put my chocolate chips on. So I'm washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to pick up black and brown. And this time I didn't put water on my brush, and I'm going to do some really dark, chaotic little marks. So I'm just going to kind of pick a couple of spots, wiggle my brush. You can continue to pick up black and brown and any combination thereof. You can make big spots, you can make little spots, whatever is visually appealing to you, whatever you want to represent the cookies that you would like to present to Santa, or the little person in your life would like to present to Santa. It's totally up to you. So you can have as many as you want. They can be as little or as big as you want. And then once you've got enough of those dark marks, I'm going to wash my brush one more time. And now I'm adding my final little texture onto my cookie. So washing and drying my brush one more time. And this is where I'm just going to add some more little light spots. I'm probably going to use a little bit more red so I can have a little bit more, maybe, I don't know, orangey hue to my cookie. So you can use any combination of your tan, your light tan, red, yellow, white to give yourself these little textural marks. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to maybe pick up my red, yellow, and a touch of my tan, and a touch of white. So I have red, yellow, tan, and white, the light tan and white. So what I'm going to do is I'm really just going to start kind of wiggling around these little light marks on my cookie. So this is going to give me, I think I want a little more red on there. This is going to give me just the illusion of more texture on my cookie. You can, you might want yours to have more than I have. You might want yours to have less than I have. I'm just picturing this to be all the little crumbly pieces of the cookie as it, when it heats up and when it gets all nice and, voluminous in the oven. It's got all these little pieces that are popping out. So, you can make yours whatever way you want, but I just kind of keep adding these lighter tones in various shades. So maybe a little bit more orange, maybe a little bit more white, and just giving myself this nice texture throughout my cookie. And that way it looks like it's really ready to be eaten and it's going to be delicious, and you just have fun with it. I'm adding little highlights maybe around the chocolate chips themselves, so that way maybe it looks like the cookie batter is kind of popped out a little bit right by those cookies. That's going to give you some great realistic texture to it. And then once you feel like you're all set, I would definitely recommend letting it dry for a minute, seeing if there's any additional marks that you want to make. I will probably let mine dry and see if I want to add any additional little marks to make it look more delicious than it might already look. And then we're going to use this same small brush for the next, yeah, that's looking pretty yummy. We're going to use the same small brush for the next step. So once you've got your cookie done, don't let it crumble. And then we'll use our medium brush for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna finish our glass of milk. I'm gonna be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, gray, white, and red. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to be brightening up my milk, and I'm also gonna be putting a whole bunch of reflections on my glass. So when I am doing these type of steps for glass and reflections and stuff like that, I really do like to steer you in the direction of less is more. The less you do on something like this, the more realistic it's going to look. So as we're going through this reflective process, if you start loading on the paint, you're going to lose the translucency of it, and you'll miss the detail of what's behind it, and that's what's going to give it the most realistic look to it. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to start with my light color on my milk itself. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of gray and white on my brush at the same time. I'm going to provide myself with the top kind of rim of the milk itself. So this is gray plus white. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a highlight around the edge of the milk in through here. And again, I'm going to proceed with caution and not do a lot right now. So this is just gray plus white. And then I'm going to bring it down a little bit in a bottom arcing motion. So this is in essence the front edge of our milk in through here. So once I've got that on there, I'm going to pick up a little bit more white, and I'm going to make my milk, the front part of it, lighter. So I have white plus a little bit of gray on my brush, and I'm going to make this part kind of the lightest. So gray plus white on my brush right now, and I'm just rubbing it in up to this bottom line that we just created, and then I'll get it to fade out into the gray over on the sides. So I've got white on the center area, and then I get it to kind of fade out to the gray over on the sides. I'm going to pick up a little bit more gray and white just to get these side areas to blend a little bit more. So that was gray plus white to get it to blend a little bit better over on the sides. I'll amp up that white in the center in a second. I just want to concentrate on getting these sides to blend. So that was gray, and then just getting that to blend. I'm picking up a tiny bit more white right now, just to, again, get this center area a little bit brighter, so it'll translate really well as milk. So something like that works for me, getting it up to that line. So now that I've got that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple of real bright little, we'll call them like wet marks along the edges of that milk itself. So I'm picking up white, and just the tip of my brush, I can take a really heavy kind of white marks and just kind of almost like speckle them along the edge of the milk line, the liquid line, like this. You don't have to do the whole thing, just these little tiny speckles will help to make it look pretty natural. I'm going to add a little bit of darkness in through here. So I just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a touch of black plus my gray. So very tiny bit of black on my brush plus my gray, just to give myself a little tiny bit of darkness right in here. Make it look like it's a little maybe in movement, or maybe taking on a little bit of a reflection from his hand up above. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and add the details to my glass itself. But first, add a little bit more. I want a little bit more sparkle on my milk into here. There we go. And so I'm going to wash and dry my brush. So this reflection, again, is going to be very minimal work. So it's going to tell me the shape of the glass and reflect anything around it. So that's where I'm going to be using red, because there's red in Santa's shirt. I'm going to be using black so I can add some nice clean reflective lines. I'll use gray, I'll use white. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to put gray plus water on my brush. So I want a lot of fluidity in my brush with a little bit of gray. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and make these streaks down my glass. So I've got gray plus water on my brush, and I can just kind of pull it down like this. And because I have the water on my brush, it's going to allow me to have these nice kind of fluid type of lines. So something like this, and it's transparent, translucent, so it's going to make it look more realistic. So that's starting the process. I'm going to put a little bit more up at the top with less water. So I just picked up more gray, a little bit less water on my brush so I can get it a little bit thicker in through here. And again, just kind of pulling it down in a nice continual type of a streak, so I have it appear that the glass itself is nice and smooth. If you have it all bumpy coming down, it's going to make your glass look like it is not smooth. And then maybe I'll put a couple coming down this center area in through here. That's looking pretty good. I think I want it a little bit stronger over here, so I can just kind of keep adding until I feel like I've got the depth or the color there that I want. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a teeny bit of black paint with water on my brush. So I have black plus water, and I'm going to put a little bit of a dark kind of edge underneath the edge or the rim of my glass. So something like this. So that'll make it look like maybe it's a little beveled. I can put a little bit underneath this one. And this also helps to kind of clean up any of that gray line if that wasn't perfect. And I can also put a little bit of this going down the sides. So the black is going to help you to clean up little lines. And because I'm using water on my brush, it allows me to have transparency in it. I can have nice flow to it. So if I want a dark reflection down the side, I can certainly just kind of pull a little bit of black, pull it down. That'll work there. I'm going to put a tiny bit over on this left-hand side too. Again, I'm utilizing it as reflections. I'm utilizing it as help me clean up my lines. So you can, when you've got reflections to work with, you can really utilize them to your benefit to allow for a more realistic kind of look, and also to help you correct things if they didn't go exactly as you had planned. So that works. Now I'm going to put some brightness on my edges and maybe some reflection of the red. So I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm picking up a little bit of red paint. I'm going to put tiny bits in my rim of my glass, maybe little streaks coming down the side of my glass. The way that this will look the most realistic is if you bring it right in front of your milk so you can see it in that way. And then I'm just gonna maybe put a tiny bit up in through here as if it's reflecting good old Saint Nick's clothing. There we go. And now I'm gonna wash and dry my brush. I'm gonna put some real bright highlights of white on the edge of that rim. So wash and dry my brush, pick up some white paint, and just give myself a whole bunch of sparkles right along the edge of my glass in through here. Something like this. And you can do this along the rim of the glass. You could also put some sparkle, maybe just kind of coming down, maybe a little spot in through here. So wherever you feel like you want to amp up that brightness or that shininess, you can put bright white. You could even use a smaller brush than I'm using. I'm using just a pretty big brush, but what I like to do is I take it and I spin it in the paint on the side of my palette. That gives me a nice pointy bristle to it, or a nice pointy tip to it, and then I just kind of work my little corners wherever I want them to go, and then you can keep fiddling with it all you want. We are going to use this small brush for the next step. I'm gonna just make sure I've got as much in here as I want. Again, have fun with how intense you want these reflections to be, and then once you've got it, you can wash and dry. Of course, I'm just going to keep on keeping on. I like my bright reflections. Wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the sleeve and the cuff. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. I know I said I was going to use my small, but I didn't really mean that. I meant I wanted to use my large. So I'm going to be doing the sleeve with red, black, and white, and I'm going to do the cuff with black, brown, and white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first put a teeny tiny bit of black and red on my brush at the same time. So just a little bit on each corner. And then I'm just going to kind of dot this bottom portion of my sleeve, making sure that I bring it all the way, covering my chalk mark. And I don't even need to get close to my cuff because I know I want that a little shadowed. So you can leave that area dry right now. We're really just going for a little bit more of a shadow down in through here and a highlight up at the top. So this area in through here you can just leave as is. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to add red on my brush to start up at the top with red. I'm getting it wet with the red paint, and then I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint on my dirty brush. So just a little itty bitty bit of white paint on my dirty brush, and I'm just going to tap in these little tiny speckle marks up at the top, which is going to provide the illusion that it is round and it's being illuminated by some kind of light source up top. So something like that. That's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush and kind of do a similar process on the sleeve. So I'm washing and drying my brush. I might have not have said it, but I might use some of that gray too. So washing and drying my brush. I'm going to start with a little bit of brown and black on my brush. And again, just a itty bitty bit. You can even just tap it off on your paper towel so you don't have too much on there. And I'm going to have it nice and dark down at the bottom. So again, just kind of tapping it in like this. I'm going to put a little bit, I think, in through here as well. I'm picking up a touch of my gray too. I want just a little tiny bit of a highlight on the edge of the inside of here. So a little bit of gray just went on my brush. And then as I work my way up this sleeve, I'm picking up more gray. I'm not picking up the brown and the black anymore, just more gray. And this is going to work up my sleeve like this. And then in a minute, I'm going to start picking up white as well. This is the time where I do want to make sure that I have closed off any little gaps that I might have missed along that first time that we painted in through here. So if you have like a little red gap between, or a background gap between your cuff and your hand, now's the time where you just want to kind of tap in that little fluff around the edge and make sure that that is all closed off. Same thing with right in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm picking up gray plus white on my brush. So gray plus white, and again, you don't need a lot, so just tap it off on your paper towel, and I'm going to work my way towards the brighter stuff up at the top. So this is gray plus white, and you can do it kind of in little rows. You can just do it in a nice kind of chaotic dotting fashion, whatever works for you. I don't have much paint on my brush, and I'm not pushing it really hard, so This way I have the little speckly marks that will allow some of that background color to show. So that way that's again is what's gonna make it look nice and fluffy. And now I'm going to put a tiny bit of this gray plus white down in this little area in through here. So we have a little kind of bit of a highlight down here. So just using kind of the corner of my brush to just get a little bit in through there. Maybe just a little bit on this cuff part here. There we go. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to start picking up pretty heavy white. So I'm just wiping my brush off on my paper towel, picking up some white paint. And again, to get it to do what you want, don't have too much paint and don't press too hard. And then I'm just going to kind of start tapping in this real bright white stuff up at the top. And again, you don't have to do the whole thing. You can use the little corner of your brush. If it's not as fluffy looking as you want, you can always kind of fluff out your bristles by pushing it into your paper towel and just kind of drying it off. Sometimes if you have too much moisture within those, they'll clump together, and you can reload if you want to, and then just kind of keep tapping away. There we go. We've got it working now. And then I wanted to just go a little bit darker as it's coming down that sleeve. So I just let myself run out of paint that way, or close to it. That way it'll look way brighter at the top, and then it just kind of fades or fizzles out down at the bottom. So if you start with minimal amount of paint on your brush, it will allow you to just kind of run out as you're going towards those darker areas. I definitely want a little bit more white up at this top, so I just picked up a little bit more white so I can have as bright as I want. And then again, this is one of those steps, let it dry for a minute, and if you want to add more, feel free to do so. We are going to be using our small brush for the next step. I'm sure of it this time. So once you've got this done, you can put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm using black paint to sign this. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you can certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you would like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine. It's your painting. You get to sign it however you'd like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very seasonal, fun image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.